Okay, I'm back. Unfortunately, I ended up getting something caught in my throat, so hopefully that won't make it hard to read, and hopefully I won't have to pause to clear my throat. But if I do at all, I will try to do it so that I hit the pause button instead of just coughing mid reading or something, unless it happens like so spontaneously that I can't, that I won't be able to do anything about it. So, I'm going to do one throat clear with a pause, and then we will resume. All right, 32. Ren was back, and it felt like someone had turned Cath's world right side up, like she'd been hanging from the floor all year long, trying not to drop through the ceiling. Cath would Cath could call Ren now whenever she wanted, without thinking or worrying. They met for lunch and for dinner. They wrapped their schedules around each other's, filling in all the small spaces. It's like it's like you got your lost arm back or something, Levi said. Like your happy starfish. The way he was beaming, you'd think he was the one who got his sister back. That was some bad. That was some. Bleh. That was some bad medicine. Not talking to your mom, not talking to your sister. That was some Jacob and Esau business. I'm still not talking to my mom, Cass said. She had talked to Ren about their mom a lot, actually. Ren wasn't surprised that Laura hadn't stayed at the hospital. She doesn't do heavy stuff, Ren said. I can't believe she even came. She probably thought you were dying. I wasn't dying. How do you not do the heavy stuff, Cass said, indignant. Because being a parent is all heavy stuff. She doesn't want to be a parent, Ren said. She wants me to call her Laura. Kath decided uh Kath decided to start calling Laura Kath decided to start calling Laura mom again in her head. Then she decided to stop calling Laura anything at all in her head. Ren Ren still talked to her, she who would not be named. She said they texted mostly and that they were friends on Facebook. Ren was okay with that amount of involvement. She seemed to think it was better than nothing and safer than everything. Kath didn't get it. Her brain just didn't work that way. Her heart didn't, but she was done fighting with Ren about it. Now that Kath and Ren were Kath and Ren again, Levi thought they should all be hanging out all the time. The four of them. Did you know that Jandro in the AG? Yeah. Did you know that Jandro's in the AG school? He asked. We've even had classes together. Maybe we should go on lots of double dates, Cass said, and then we can get married on the same day in a double ceremony, in matching dresses, and the four of us will light the unity candle all at the same time. Pfft, Levi said. I'm picking up. Yeah, I'm picking up my own dress. Four of them. Uh, the four of them had all hung out together once or twice. Incidentally, when Jandra was coming to get Ren, when Levi was coming to get Kath, you don't you don't want to hang out with you don't want to hang out with Ren and me. Kath tried to tell him. All we do is listen to rap music and talk about Simon. There were only 6 weeks left until the eighth dance came out, and Ren was more stressed about it than Kath was. I just don't know how you're going to wrap everything up, she'd say. I've got an outline, Kath kept telling her. Yeah, but you've got classes. Let me see your outline. Usually she huddled over the laptop in Kath's room. It was closer to campus. Don't expect me to tell you apart, Reagan said, uh, when this became a routine. I have short hair, Ren said. She wears glasses. Stop, Reagan said, groaned. Don't make me look at you. It's like the shining in here. Ren cocked her head and squinted. I can't tell if you're being serious. It doesn't matter, Kath said. Ignore her. Reagan scowled at Kath. Are you Zach or are you Cody? Today they were in Ren's room just to give Reagan a break. They were sitting on Ren's bed, the laptop resting on both their knees. Courtney was there too, getting ready to go out. She was studying with the Sigma Chist tonight. You can't kill Baz, Ren said, pressing down the arrow key and skimming Cass carry on outline. They kept coming back to this point. Ren was adamant. I never thought I would kill Baz, Cass said. Ever. But it's the ultimate redemption, you know? If he sacrifices himself for Simon after all their years of fighting, after this one precious year of love, it makes everything they've been through together much sweeter. I'll have to kill you if you kill Baz, Ren said, and I'll be first in a long line. I totally think Baz is going to die in the I totally think Baz is going to die in the last movie, Courtney said, putting on her jacket. Simon has to kill him. He's a vampire. He'll have to die last. He'll have to die in the last book first, Cass said. She still couldn't tell whether Courtney was actually stupid or whether she just couldn't be bothered to think before she talked. Ren shook her head and Kath rolled her eyes, like, don't waste your time with her. Don't work too hard. Don't work too hard, ladies, Courtney said, waving on her way out. Only Kath waved back. Something had happened between Red and Courtney. Kath wasn't sure if it was an emergency room or something else. They were still friends. They still ate lunch together, but even small things seemed to irritate Ren. The way Courtney wore heels with jeans, or the way she thought Boughton was the past part. Wait, when she thought Boughton was the past participle of bought. Kath Kath had tried to ask about it, but Ren always shrugged her off. She's wrong, Kath said now. I don't think GTL could ever kill off Baz. And you can't either, Ren said, but it makes him the ultimate romantic hero. Think of Tony in West Side Story, or Jack in Titanic, or Jesus. That's horseshit, Ren said. Kath giggled. Horseshit? Ren elbowed her. Yes. The ultimate act of heroism shouldn't be death. You're always saying you want to give Baz the stories he deserves, to rescue him from Gemma. I just don't think she realizes his potential as a character, Kath said. So you're going to kill him off? Isn't the best revenge supposed to be a life well lived? The punk rock way to end Carry On would be to let Baz and Simon live happily ever after. Kath laughed. I'm serious, Ren said. They've been through so much together, not just in your story, but in canon, and in all the hundreds of fics we've read about them. Think of your readers. Think about how good it'll feel to leave us with a little hope. But I don't want it to be cheesy. Happily ever after, or just together ever after, is not cheesy, Ren said. It's the noblest, most courageous thing two people can shoot for. Kath studied Ren's face. It was like looking at a lightly warped mirror through a glass, through a glass darkly. Are you in love? Ren Ren blushed and looked down at the laptop. This isn't about me. It's about Baz and Simon. I'm making it about you, Kath said. Are you in love? Ren pulled the computer on. Ren pulled the computer fully onto her lap. She started scrolling back up to the top of Kath's outline. Yes, she said coolly. There's nothing wrong with that. I didn't say there was, Kath grinned. You're in love. Oh, shut up. So are you. Kath started to argue. Give it up, Ren said, pointing at Kath's face. I've seen you look at Levi. What's that thing you wrote about Simon once, that his eyes followed Baz like he was the brightest thing in the room, like he cast everything else into shadow? That's you. You can't look away from him. Kath was pretty sure that Levi was the Kath was pretty sure that Levi was the brightest thing in the room, in any room, bright and warm and crackling. He was a human campfire. I really like him. Have you slept with him? No. Kath knew what Ren meant, and she didn't want to hear about Levi's grandmother's quilt, and the way they'd slept curled up in each other, like stackable chairs. Have you, with Jandro? Ren laughed. Duh. So, are you going to? Kath rubbed her typing wrists. Yeah, she said. I think so. Ren grabbed Kath's arm, then shoved her away. Oh my God, will you tell me about it when you do? Duh, Kath pushed her back. Anyway, I don't feel like it has to happen now, like immediately. But he makes me want to, and he makes me think that it'll be okay. That I don't have to worry about screwing it up. Ren rolled her eyes. You're not going to screw it up. Well, I'm not going to nail it either, am I? Remember how long it took me to learn how to drive and I still can't and I still can't backwards skate. Think of how think of how many beautiful first times you've written for Simon and Baz. That's totally different, Cass said dismissively. They don't even have the same parts. Ren started giggling, then she couldn't stop. She hugged the laptop to her chest. You're more comfortable with their parts than she couldn't stop giggling. Your own. And you've never even seen their parts. I try to write around it. Kath was giggling too. I know, Ren said, and you do a really good job. When they were done laughing, Ren punched Kath's arm. You'll be fine. The first few times you do it, you only get graded on attendance. Great, Kath scoffed. It makes me feel better. She shook her head. This whole conversation is premature. Ren smiled, but she looked serious, like she wanted something. Hey, Kath, what now? Don't kill Baz. I'll even bait it for you, if you want. Just don't kill him. Baz deserves a happy ending more than anybody. Shh. I just hush. I worry. Don't. But Simon. Baz? Here. From Carry On Simon, posted September 2011 by fanfics.net author Magicath. Have you started? Professor Piper asked. Yes, Kath lied. She couldn't help it. She couldn't say no. Professor Piper was liable to abort this whole endeavor. Kath still hadn't shown her any progress because Kath hadn't made any progress. There was just too much else going on. Ren, Levi, Baz, Simon, her dad, actually. Kath wasn't worried about her dad as she used to be, but that was one nice thing about Ren going home every weekend. On the weekends that Ren was stuck at home, she was so bored she practically live blogged the whole thing for Kath. Sending constant texts and emails. Dad's making me watch a Lewis and Clark documentary. It's like he's driving me to drink. Ren didn't even know about Kath's fiction. Ren didn't even know about Kath's fiction writing assignment. Kath had considered telling Professor Piper again that she wasn't cut out for fiction writing, that she was practically fiction phobic. But once Kath was here, looking up at Professor Piper's hopeful, confident face, she could never get it out. She'd rather endure these excruciating checkups than tell the truth. She'd only ever thought about her project when she was sitting in this room. That's wonderful, the professor said, leaning forward off her desk to pat Kath's arm, smiling just the way Kath wanted her to. I'm so relieved. I thought I was going to have to give you another blood, toil, tears, and sweat speech, and I didn't know if I had one in me. Kath smiled, and I thought about what a repugnant creature. Kath smiled and thought about what a repugnant creature she was. So tell me about it, the professor said. May I read what you have so far? Kath shook her head too quickly, then kept shaking her head at a more normal pace. No, I mean, not yet. Not yet. Fair enough. Professor Piper looked suspicious, or maybe Kath was just paranoid. Can you tell me what you're writing about? Yeah, Cass said. Of course. I'm writing about. She imagined a big wheel spinning around, like on The Price is Right or Wheel of Fortune. Wherever it landed, that would be it. That's what she'd have to write. I'm writing about. Professor Piper smiled, like she knew Kath was lying, but still really wanted her to pull this off. My mom, Cass said, and swallowed. Your mom, the professor repeated. Yeah, I mean, I'm starting there. The professor's face turned almost playful. Everyone does. The Airy, Cass said. That's what this is. Uh, Levi was sitting against his headboard. Kath was in his lap, her knees around his hip. She'd spent a lot of time in his lap lately. She liked to be on top. She liked to feel she could move away if she wanted to. She almost never wanted to. She also spent a lot of time deliberately not thinking about anything else that might be happening in his lap. His lap was abstract territory as far as Kath was concerned, unfixed, unmapped. If she thought about If she thought about Levi's lap in concrete terms, she ended up crawling off the bed and curling up by herself on the love seat. What's an eyrie? He asked. An eagle's nest. Oh, he said. Right. He ran a hand up through his hair. Kath followed her with his own hand, feeling his hair slip silkily through her fingers. He smiled at her like she was someone who had just ordered a peppermint latte. Is everything okay? She asked. He nodded and kissed her nose. Of course. When he smiled again, only his which yeah. When he smiled again, only his mouth moved. What's wrong? Kath started to move off his lap, but he caught her. Nothing, nothing. He closed his eyes like he had a headache. I got a test back today. It wasn't good, even for me. Oh, did you study for it? Clearly not enough. Kath wasn't sure how much Levi studied. He never cracked a book, but he went everywhere with earbuds. He was always listening to a lecture. When she came down to his truck, he always pulled them out when she climbed in. Kath thought back to the way he used to study with Reagan. Flashcards spread all over the room, asking question after question. It's because of me, isn't it? No, he shook his head. Indirectly, she said. You're not studying with anyone else. Kath, look at me. I've never been this happy in my life. You don't seem happy. I didn't mean right this minute, he smiled. It was tired. Um, but genuine. Kath wanted to kiss his little pink mouth, immobile. You need to study, she said, punching his chest. Okay. With Reagan. With all those girls you exploit. Right. With me. If you want, I can help you study. He reached up to her ponytail and started tugging out the rubber band that she let her head fall back. You have enough homework, he said, and thousands of Simon Snow fans hanging on your every word. Kath looked up at the cracks in the plaster ceiling while he worked the hair tie free. If it meant being here in the area with you, she said, instead of you being anywhere else with someone else, I would gladly make the sacrifice. He pulled her hair forward. It fell just past her shoulders. I can't decide if you love me, he said, or this room. Both, Kath said, then thought through his choice of words and blushed. He smiled like he'd tricked her. Okay, he said, playing with her hair. I'll study more. He lifted his legs up and bounced her forward. Take off your glasses. Why? I thought. You like my glasses. I love your glasses, especially love the moment you take them off. Do you need to study tonight? No, I just bombed a test. I got nothing to study for. He bounced her on his legs again. She rolled her eyes and took off her glasses. Levi grinned. What color are your eyes? She opened them as wide as she could. I can see them, he said, but I can't decide what color they are. What does it say on your driver's license? Blue. They're not blue. They are, on the outside. And brown in the middle, he said, and gray on the edge and green in between. Kath shrugged and looked down at his neck. There was a mole just below his ear, and another at the bottom of his throat. He was paler now than when she'd first met him. She seemed so tan that day, like a little kid who'd been playing outside all summer. What are you doing this summer? She asked. Working on the ranch. Will I see you? Yes. When? We'll make it work. He touched her cheek. Not like this. Levi looked around the room and took her face in with his hands. Not like this, he conceded. Cass, Cass nodded and bent to kiss the spot under his ear. You're sure you don't need to study? Do you? She said, no, she said. It's Friday. Levi had just shaved, so his jaw and neck were something extra soft plus minty. She ran a hand down she ran a hand down the front of his flannel shirt until her fingers caught the first button and decided right then to unbutton it. Levi inhaled. She found the next button. When she finished with the third, he pulled away from her and yanked the shirt up over his head. The t-shirt came next. Kath looked down at his chest like she'd never seen anything like it before. She'd never been to a public swimming pool. You look thinner with your clothes on, she said with surprise. Tracing her fingers over his shoulders, he laughed. Is that a compliment? I didn't expect you to look so strong. He tried to kiss her, But she leaned back. She wasn't ready to look away. Levi was noticeably muscular. Not like Jandro, not even like Abel. But he was firm and nicely shaped, muscles curving around his shoulders, over his arms, across his chest. Kath wanted to go back and rewrite every scene she'd ever written about Baz or Simon's chest. She'd written them flat and sharp and hard. Levi was soft, uh, was all soft motion and breath, curves and warm hollows. Levi's chest was a living thing. You're so beautiful, she said. That's you. Don't argue with me. You're beautiful. Taking off Levi's shirt had been such an inspired idea. Kath was thinking about losing her own. Levi was thinking about it too. He was playing. He was playing with them, sliding his fingers just underneath it while they kissed. Kissed. Kath loved that word. She used it sparingly in her fic, just because it felt so powerful. It felt like kissing to say it. Well done, English language. Levi kissed with his jaw and his bottom lip. She hadn't done this with enough people to know whether that was distinctive, but she felt like it was. He kissed her, ran his fingers under her arm, and if it just raised her arms, and yeah, and if she just raised her arms now, he'd probably take care of her shirt. She couldn't. Yeah, she could count on him to pinch. She could count on him to pitch in. Kath couldn't remember what she was waiting for, what she was so scared of. Was she waiting for marriage? At that moment, it was hard to think beyond Levi, whom she was nowhere near marrying. That fact only made her want him more, because if she didn't end up marrying Levi, wouldn't she wouldn't have lifetime access to his chest and his lips and whatever might be happening in his lap. What if they married other people? She should probably have sex with him now, while she still could. Flawed logic, her brain was shouting, miserably flawed. How do you even know when you're anywhere near marrying someone, she wondered. Is that question about time or distance? Cass' phone chimed. Levi licked her mouth like he was trying to get the last bit of jam off the back of her throat. Her phone chimed again. It probably wasn't important. Ren, complaining about their dad, or their dad complaining about Ren, or one of them being rushed to the hospital. Kath pulled away, catching Levi's hands, trying to catch her breath. Let me check, she said. Ren. He nodded and pulled his hands away from her shirt. Kath resisted the urge to slide down his legs like he was a hobby horse, like it would feel good, but she might never recover her dignity. Instead, she climbed drunkenly off him, reaching off the bed for her phone. He crawled after her, trying to read over her shoulder. Ren. Hey, you should come to Omaha. Jondra's here, and we're going dancing later at Guacamaya. Fun. Come. Can't. Texted back. Levi time. She threw her phone on the floor and then tried to find her way back to Levi's lap. But she already leaned back against the headboard with his knees up. Lap unavailable. She tried to move his knees out of the way, but he wouldn't let her. He was looking at her like he was still trying to figure out what color her eyes were. Is everything okay? She asked, kneeling in front of him. Yeah, everything cool. Everything okay on your end? He moved his chin toward her phone. Kath nodded. Perfectly. Levi nodded. Kath nodded again. Then she lifted her arms up over her head. Agatha wrung her fingers in her cape miserably, but still prettily. Even Agatha's tear-stained face was a thing of beauty. Simon wanted to tell her it was all right, to forget the whole scene with Baz in the forest. Agatha standing in the moonlight, holding both of Baz's pale hands in her own. Just tell me, Simon said, his voice shaking. I don't know what to say, she wept. There's you, and you're good, and you're right. And then there's him, and he's different. He's a monster. Simon clenched his square jaw. Agatha just nodded. Perhaps. From Chapter 18, Simon Snow and the Seventh Oak. Copyright 2010 by Gemma T. Leslie. 34. They stepped into the elevator. Kath pressed 9. I can't believe we've been arguing for 15 minutes about whether Simon Snow should reach for his sword or his wand in a lame piece of fanfiction. And by I can't believe, Kath meant I can't believe how happy I am. Ren was coming up to her room, and they were going to work on Carry On until Levi was done with work. This was the routine now. Kath liked routines. She felt flushed with serotonin. Ren shoved her. It's not lame, it's important. Um, Only to me. And me and everyone else who's reading. And besides, you you by yourself should be enough. You've been working on this for almost 2 years. This is your life's work. God, that's pathetic. I met your life's work so far, and it's extremely impressive. It would be even if you didn't have thousands of fans. Jandra can't believe how many readers you have, and he thinks you should try to monetize it. He doesn't really get the whole fan fiction thing. We tried to watch The Mage's Heir, and he fell asleep. Kath Kath grasped only partly in jest. He never told me he was a non-believer. I wanted you to get to know him first. Well, what about Levi? The elevator doors opened. They got off on Kath's floor. He loves it, she said. Simon Snow fan fiction, everything. He makes me read my stuff out loud to him. Isn't he squicked by the slash? No, he's Zen. Why, is Jandro? Oh, yeah. He's squicked by gay people. No, well, maybe. It's more the idea of straight girls writing about gay boys. He thinks it's deviant. That made Kath giggle. When Ren started giggling with her, he thinks I'm the deviant one, Kath said. Shut up, Ren shoved her again. Kath stopped. Kath stopped. There was a boy standing outside her room. The wrong boy. What's up? Ren stopped. Did you forget something? Kath, Nick said, taking a few steps forward. Hey, I've been waiting for you. Hey, Kath said. Hey, Nick. Hey, he said again. Kath was still 6 feet away from her room. She didn't want to come any closer. What are you doing here? Nick's eyebrows were low, and his mouth was open. She could see his tongue sliding along his teeth. I just wanted to talk to you. Is this your library guy? Ren asked, looking at him like he was a photo on Facebook, not a human being. No, Cass said, reacting more to the your than anything else. Nick glanced at Ren, then decided to ignore her. Look, Kath, you couldn't just call? Kath asked. I didn't have your cell number. I tried to call your room. Um, you're in the you're in the student directory. I left a bunch of voicemails. We have a voicemail? The door to her room opened abruptly, and Reagan looked out. Is this yours? Kath asked, nodding to Nick. No, Kath said. I didn't think so. I told him he'd have to wait outside. You were right, Ren said, not very quietly. He does look very old world. Reagan and Ren didn't know what happened with Nick, how he used Kath. All they knew was that she didn't want to talk about him anymore, that she refused to go to Love Library. She'd been too embarrassed to tell anyone the details. Kath didn't feel embarrassed now. Now that she was looking right at him, she felt angry, robbed. She'd written some good stuff with Nick, and now she'd never get it back. If she tried to use any of those lines, any of those jokes, people could say that she stole them from him, like she'd ever steal anything from Nick, except for the paisley scarf he was wearing. She'd always liked that scarf, but Nick could keep his shitty second person present tense, and all his skinny girl characters with nicotine-stained fingers. Those girls were telling Kath's jokes now. It was infuriating. Uh, uh, yeah, it was infuriating. Look, I just need to talk to you, he said. It won't take long. So talk, Ren said. Yeah, Reagan said, leaning against the door jamb. Talk. Nick looked like he was waiting for Kath to bail him out, but she wasn't in the mood. She thought about walking away and leaving him here to deal with Reagan and Ren, who were difficult and unpleasant a lot of the time, even if they liked you. Go ahead, Cass said. I'm listening. Okay. Nick cleared his throat. Fine. I came to tell Kath, he looked at her, that my story was selected for Prairie Schooner. That's the university's literary journal, he said to Ren. It's an incredible honor for an undergraduate. Congratulations, Cass said, feeling all used up all over again, like he was robbing her again, this time at gunpoint. Nick nodded. Yeah, well, the faculty advisor, Professor Piper. He looked around the hallway, agitated, then gave a little huff. She knows that you helped me out with my story, and she thought it would be nice if we shared the credit. His story? Ren looked at Kath. Nice? It's a prestigious journal, Nick said, and a full it'd be a full co-author credit. We can even do it alphabetically. Your name will come first. Kath felt someone's hand go on her back. Hey, Levi said, kissing the top of her head. Got off early. Hey, he said brightly to Nick, holding his arm out and around Kath to shake hands. I'm Levi. Nick took his hand, looking confused and hassled. Nick. Nick from the library, he said, still cheerful, resting his arm around Kath's shoulder. Nick looked back at Kath. So what do you think? Is that cool? Will you tell Professor Piper that it's cool? I don't know, Kath said. It's just. After everything, I'm not sure I'm comfortable. He pressed his navy blue eyes into her. You've got to say yes, Kath. This is such an opportunity for me. You know how badly I want this. Then take it, Kath said quietly. She was trying to pretend that everyone in her whole life wasn't standing right there listening. You can have it, Nick. You don't have to share it with me. Nick was pretending too. I can't, he said, moving another step closer. Professor Piper, says it runs with both our names or not at all. Kath, please. The hallway had gotten very quiet. Reagan was looking at Nick like she was already tying him to the railroad tracks. Ren was looking at him like she Ren was looking at him like she was one of the cool girls in his stories, oozing contempt. Levi was smiling like he'd smiled at those drunk guys at Muggsy's before he talked Jandro into throwing a punch. Kath went back to pretending they weren't. She thought about Nick's story, their story, everything she poured out into it, and the chance now that she might get something out. And then she thought about sitting next to Nick in the stacks, trying to get him to let go of the notebook. Levi squeezed her shoulder. I'm sorry, Kath said, but I don't want any credit. You were right all along. It's your story. No, he said, clenching his teeth. I can't lose this. You'll get another opportunity. You're a great writer, Nick, she said, and meant it. You don't need me. No, I can't lose this. I already lost my teaching assistantship because of you. Cass stepped back into Levi. Reagan opened the door wider and Ren pushed past Nick, pushing Kath into the room. It was nice to meet you, Levi said, and you'd have to really know Levi to know that he didn't and, and you'd have to really know Levi to know that he didn't mean it. Nick held his ground, like he still thought he might talk to Kath into helping him. Reagan kicked the door shut in his face. Were you really going out with that guy? She asked uh, it had before it had quite closed. Was that your library boyfriend? Writing partner, Cass said, avoiding them all, setting her bag on her desk. What a douche, Reagan muttered. I'm pretty sure my mom has that scarf. Did he steal your story? Red asked. The one where you were working together? No, not exactly, Cass spun around. It doesn't matter, she said with as much iron as she could. Okay. She looked up at all three faces, all ready to be offended for her, and she realized that it really didn't matter. Nick, Nick, who couldn't write his own anti-love story without her, was ancient history. Kath grinned at Levi. Are you okay? He asked. Grinned back because he couldn't help it. Bless him to infinity and beyond. I'm great, she said. Her sister was still sizing Kath up. Great, Ren said, deciding something. Okay, great. When she turned to Levi and punched his arm, all right, Lieutenant Starbuck, since you're here, you might as well take me to farmhouse. And you might as well get us white chocolate mochas on the way. Might as well leave now, Levi said gamely. I'm parked out in the fire lane. Kath picked up her bag again, and I want you both to know, Levi said, opening the door. Kath peeked out to make sure Nick was gone. That I know that. Yeah. And I want you both to know, Levi said, opening the door. Kath peeked out to make sure Nick was gone. That I know that was a Battlestar Galactica reference. Wait, what was the Battlestar Galactica? Never mind, I've never actually seen it. Yeah, Ren said. You're a first-class geek. When they got to Jandro's frat house, Levi got out again to help. Um, Levi got out again to help Ren, only sometimes help Kath in and out anymore. Usually she was already there before he got a chance. When Ren got out of the truck, Kath reluctantly slid away from the driver's seat and buckled her seatbelt. Levi started the truck and shifted gears without looking at her. He hadn't really looked at her since they left her room. Are you all right? She asked. Yeah, just hungry. Are you hungry? He still didn't look at her. Is this about Nick? She asked. She realized that she was waiting for it to be about Nick. No, Levi said. Should it be? You seemed like you didn't want to talk to him. I don't, Cass said. Okay, are you hungry? No. Are you jealous? No. He shook his head like he was shaking something off. Then he turned to her and smiled. Do you want me to be? He raised an eyebrow. I can throw a big tantrum if you like that sort of thing. I don't think so, Cass said. Thanks, though. Good. I'm too hungry to rage. Do you mind if we stop somewhere? No, she said. Or I can make you something if you want. Eggs. Levi beamed at her. God, yes. Can I watch? Cass smiled. You're ridiculous. Levi wanted an omelet. He got the eggs and cheese out of the refrigerator, and Kath found a pan and butter. The kitchen almost didn't remind Kath missing of the missing blonde girl anymore. That Kath had no staying power. Kath had just cracked 3 eggs when Levi tugged on her ponytail. Hey, yeah? Why doesn't your sister like me? Everyone likes you, Kath said, whisking the eggs with a fork. And how come you only hang out with her when I'm not around? Kath glanced back at them. He was leaning against the sink. Cheese, she said, nodding at his hands. Great. When he just kept looking at her, Kath said, maybe I like having you all to myself. Maybe, he said, raking one hand into his hair. Maybe I embarrass you. She poured the eggs into the pan and reached for the cheese grater herself. What am I embarrassed by? Your rangy good looks or your irresistible personality? Alejandro is a Regent scholar, Levi said softly behind her, and his family owns half the Sand Hills. Wait, what? Kath set everything down and turned back to him. You really think I'm embarrassed by you? Levi smiled gently and shrugged. I'm not angry, sweetheart. No, you're crazy. I didn't even think, eh, I didn't even, I didn't even know those things about Jandro. And anyway, who cares? Kath reached up to his chest and clenched her fist back in his black sweatshirt. God, Levi, look at you. She didn't have words for what Levi was. He was a cave painting. He was the red balloon. She lifted her heels and pulled him forward until his face was so close. She could look at only one of his eyes at a time. You're magic, she said. Levi's eyes smiled, almost shut. She kissed the corner of his mouth, and he moved his face to catch her lips. When Kath heard the egg start to snap, she pulled away, but Levi took hold of her waist. Why? Then he asked. Doesn't Ren like me? Do I cramp your style? I can't I can't tell. I can tell you don't want me around when she's here. Kath pushed against his chest away and went back to her stove, quickly grating the cheese over the eggs. It has nothing to do with you. Levi tried to move into her line of sight, leaning against the counter next to the stove. How do you figure? It's just nothing. It's weird, she said. It'd be different if you'd grown up with us, or if you'd met us both at the same time. What would be different? Kath shrugged and scraped at the omelet with a wooden spatula. Then I would know that you have enough information to choose me. Levi leaned over the stove, trying to catch her eye. Get back, Kath said. You're going to burn yourself. He backed up, but only a few inches. Of course, I choose you, but you didn't know, Ren. Kath. She wished there was more to do with omelets than watch them. I know, I know you think she's pretty. You know that because I think you're pretty. You said she was hot. When? When you met her? Levi looked confused for a second. One eyebrow arched beautifully. You called her you called her Superman, Cass said. Cather. Why would he call her Superman? Sorry, I'm once again breaking the flow of writing. Why would he call her Superman? Why not Superwoman? I'm confused. It's probably a thing to be really stupidly confused about. Also, I hate that when I look at myself in the camera, my neck scrunches up like that. But anyway, that's No, nothing. If you are purely only listening to the audio of this, then the visual makes absolutely no sense to what I just mentioned. Anyway, I am literally about to carry on with reading, and yes, that was a god awful pun, and I I am deeply apologetic. Anyway, I broke the flow of writing for that. Dear God. Okay. You called her Superman, Cass said. Catherine, he said, remembering. I was trying to get your attention. I was trying to say that you were hot without actually saying it. Well, it sucked. I'm sorry. He reached out for her waist again. She kept looking down at the eggs. I know, I know that you like me, she said. You know that I love you. Kath kept staring at the pan, but she's a lot like me. Some of our old best friends couldn't even tell us apart. And then when they could, it would be because Ren was the better one, because she talked more, or smiled more, or just flat out looked better. I can tell you apart just fine. Long hair, glasses. Kath, come on, look at me. He pulled at her belt loops, and she flipped the omelet before she let herself turn toward him. I can tell you apart, he said. We sound the same. We kind of talk the same. We have all the same gestures. True, he said, nodding, holding her chin up. But it's almost like that makes your differences more dramatic. What do you mean? It means sometimes your sister will say something and it will sort of shock me to hear it will sort of shock me to hear her say it with your voice. Kath looked up to his eyes, unsure. They were big and earnest. Like what? I can't think of anything specific, he said. It's like she smiles more than you, but she's harder somehow. Closed up. I'm the one who never leaves my room. I'm not explaining this right. I like Ren, he said, what I know of her. But she's more forceful than you. Confident. Part maybe more like she takes what she wants from a situation. There's nothing wrong with that. No, I know, Levi said, but it's not you. You don't push through every moment. You pay attention. You take everything in. I like that about you. I like that better. Kath closed her eyes and felt tears catch on her cheeks. I like your glasses, he said. I like your Simon Snow t-shirts. I like that you don't smile at everyone, because then, when you smile at me, Cather, he kissed her mouth. Look at me. She did. I choose you over everyone. Kath took in a painful breath and reached up with only one hand to touch his chin. I love you, she said. Levi. Levi's face broke open just before he kissed her. He pulled away again a few seconds later. Say it again. She had to make him another omelet. Do you know what the most disappointing thing about being what the most disappointing thing is about being a magician? Penelope shook her head and rolled her eyes. A combination she'd gotten terribly good at over the years. Don't be silly, Simon. There's nothing disappointing about magic. There is, he argued, only partly just a teaser. I always figured we'd learn a way to fly by now. Oh, pish, Penelope said. Anyone can fly. Anyone with a friend. She held her ringed hand out. She held her ringed hand out to him and grinned. Up, up, and away. Simon felt the steps drift away from him and laughed his way through a slow somersault. When he was upright again, he leveled his wand at Penelope. From Chapter 11, Simon Snow and the Five Blades. Copyright 2008 by Gemma T. Leslie. 35. Look at them, Reagan said, shaking her head fondly. They're all grown up. Kath turned to her cereal bar and watched. Sorry, I'm going to readjust myself here. Kath turned to the cereal bar and watched two very hungover freshmen fumble with the scoops. I still remember the night they came home with their first My Little Pony tattoos, Reagan said. And the morning that we noticed those tattoos were infected, Kath added, drinking her tomato juice. That's something Kath would miss about the dorms. 4 different kinds of juice on tap, including tomato. Where else could you get tomato juice? Reagan hated watching her drink. It's like you're drinking blood, Reagan would say, if blood had the consistency of gravy. Reagan was still gazing at the hungover girls. How I wonder how many familiar faces we'll see next year. Every year it's a new batch, and most of them don't come back to the dorms for a second tour. Next year, Cass said, I won't make the mistake of getting so attached. Reagan snorted. We need to turn in our housing forms if we want the same room next year. Cass set down her juice glass. Wait, are you saying you want to live with me again? F ya, you're never even home. It's like I finally got a room to myself. Cass smiled, then took another long pull of tomato juice. Well, I'll think about it. Do you have any more hot ex-boyfriends? Ren was right. She'd been on Kath to post a chapter of Carry On, Simon every single night. Uh, Otherwise you're never going to beat the eighth dance. They were going to go to the midnight release party at the Bookworm back in Omaha. Levi wanted to go too. Are we going to dress up in costumes? He asked the other night up in his room. We haven't done costumes since junior high. Kath was sitting on the love seat with her laptop. She could ride with him in the room now. She was focused on Carry On. She could have written in a room full of circus animals. Damn, he said, I wanted to do costumes. Who do you want it to go as? The mage, or maybe just one of the vampires. Count, Vidalia, or Baz. Would that make you wild with desire? I'm already wild with desire, she said from across the room. Sorry, Cass said, rubbing her eyes. Levi had been needling her all night, teasing her, trying to get her room to come out of her head and play. I just need to finish this chapter if I want Ren to read it before she falls asleep. Kath was so close to the end of Carry On that every chapter felt important. If she wrote something stupid now, she wouldn't be able to fix it or write it in later. There was no room left for filler. Every chapter meant the resolution of a plot line or character's last big scene. She wanted all of them to get the ending they deserve. Not just Baz and Simon and Agatha and Penelope, but all the other characters too. Declan, the reluctant vampire hunter, Ebb, the goatherd, Professor Benedict, Coach Mac. Kath was trying not to pay attention to her hit counts. That just added more pressure. But she knew they were off the chart in the tens of thousands. She was getting so many comments that Ren had taken to handling them for her, using Kath's profile to thank people and answer basic questions. Kath was keeping up in her class, but just barely. All her other assignments felt like the hoops she had to jump through to get Simon and Baz. One thing about writing this much, her brain never really shifted out of the world of mages. When she sat down to write, she didn't have to wade her way back into the story slowly, waiting to get used to the temperature. She was just there, all the time, all day, real life. Real life was something happening in her peripheral vision. Her laptop snapped shut, and Kath pulled back her fingers just in time. She hadn't even noticed Levi moving over to the love seat. He took her computer and gingerly set it on the floor. Commercial break. Books don't have commercials. I'm not much of a book person, he said, pulling her into his lap. Intermission, then. Kath climbed onto him reluctantly, still thinking about the last thing she typed, not sure she wanted to leave it behind. Books don't have intermissions either. What do they have? Endings. His hands were on her lips. You'll get there, he said, nosing at the collar of her shirt. His hair tickled her chin, and it broke the spell in Kath's head. Or cast a new one. Okay, she sighed, kissing his head and rocking into his stomach. Okay, intermission. You've got to give Penelope her own chapter, Ren said. They were walking back to the dorms, sloshing through the puddles. Ren had yellow rubber boots. She just kept jumping into puddles, soaking Kath's legs and ankles. Where would I put it? Kath puffed. The snow was melting, but she could still see her breath. I should have written it 2 weeks ago. Now it'll seem forced. This is why real authors wait until they've got a whole book before they show anybody. I'd kill to go back to the beginning and rewrite. You're a real author, Ren said, splashing. You're like you're like Dickens. He wrote in installments too. I'm going to destroy those books. Jealous. Ren stepped into another puddle. I'm not jealous. They're gross. I bet they make your feet sweat. Who cares? Nobody can tell. I'll be able to tell when you get back to my room and take them off. They're disgusting. Hey, Ren said, I certainly want to talk to you about that. What? Your room. Rooms. Roommates. I was thinking that next year we could room together. We could live in Pound, if you want. I don't care. Kath stopped and turned to her sister. Ren kept walking for a second before she noticed and stopped too. You want to be roommates? Kath asked. Ren was nervous. She shrugged. Yeah, if you want to, if you're not still mad about everything. I'm not mad, Kath said. She remembered the day last summer when Ren told her she didn't want to live together. Kath never felt so betrayed. Almost never. I'm not mad, she said again, this time really meaning it. Ren's lips quirked up again. She stamped a puddle between them. Good. But I can't, Cass said. Ren's face fell. What do you mean? Well, I already told Reagan I'd live with her again. But Reagan hates you. What? No, she doesn't. Why would you say that? She's so mean to you. That's just her way. I think I'm her best girlfriend, actually. Oh, Ren said. Uh, she looked small and wet. Kath wasn't sure what to say. You're my best friend, Kath said awkwardly. You know. Built in for life. Ren nodded. Yeah. No, it's okay. I should have thought of that. Of you guys living together again. She started walking and Kath followed. What about Courtney? She's moving into the Delta Gamma house. Oh, Kath said. I forgot she was a pledge. But that's not why I asked you, Ren said, like it was important to say so. You should move to Pound. You could live on our floor. I'm serious. Ren smiled and squared her shoulders, already recovering herself. Yeah, she said. Okay, why not? It's closer to campus. Kath leapt into the next big puddle, soaking Ren up to her thighs. Ren jumped and screamed, and it was totally worth it. Kath's feet were already soaked. Morgan's grace, Simon. Slow down. Penelope held an arm out in front of his chest and glanced around the weirdly lit courtyard. There's more than one way through a flaming gate. From Chapter 11, Simon Snow and the Third Gate. Copyright 2004 by Gemma T. Leslie. All right, I'm going to pause for a moment and debate if I'm going to split this into another video or not. Okay, I have decided that I am going to split the last section. I was originally going to just power through. We're at 36 now, but I am going to take yet another small break, and then I'm going to come back and finish it. There is just under 20 pages left to go, pretty much. And yeah, so I will see you shortly on the next one.